Welcome back to the Aquarius training video series on the Append Logger File tool. So far, we've used the Append Logger File tool to load data files into Aquarius one by one. In this video, we're going to show how to set up a hot folder, which is a special directory on your server that will automatically load into Aquarius any data files that you copy into it. Just to give you an idea how that works, let's look at this one that I've already set up on my server, this BCO02 folder. I'll open that up and I'll copy into it these two data files like this. And I'll wait for a few moments. And as you can see, Aquarius automatically noticed those two files were copied into the folder and imported them into its database. Let's look at how to set up a hot folder. Before creating a hot folder, you should first make sure that you can successfully load a data file manually into the database using the Append Logger File tool. So let's do that first. I'll start the Append Logger File tool. I'll choose one of my data files, and I'll choose this config file which we prepared in another video. I'll hit the Load File button, and I'll append this data set to this time series here. Okay, that appears to have worked. That's good. So now I'm going to go ahead and click this Create Hot Folder button over here. In the window that appears, there's a few things to specify. Number one, the path to the hot folder. Usually you can let this be. It's going to create it on my Aquarius server. The description. Here you want to type some description of the kind of files that you're going to be copying into this folder. How about I put in allsec river logger data files. A file name filter. Now what you're specifying here is what the names of the file that the hot folder is going to pay attention to. So maybe I only want it to look for files with a certain naming pattern. Anything that starts with allsec and has a file extension of CSV. For the config file, you can usually leave this as it's been pre-filled from the config file that we chose in the previous screen. A copy of this config file is going to be made for the purposes of the hot folder, and it's going to save it to this location here. Remember that if you modify your config file, the copy that the hot folder uses, that's stored here, will not reflect the changes. So if you want to update the config file that your hot folder is using, we have to do something else. Now down here finally is the data set mapping. What's listed here is the same set of choices that you had in the Append Logger File tool. Just that one data set. If I'd chosen 3 different columns of data in my file and I had appended and then come in here, there would be 3 different data set mappings for the hot folder as well. So I'll hit OK. And it just wants to ask if I can overwrite that config file. I'll say yes. And the hot folder has now been successfully created. So I'm going to close this Append Logger File toolbox. I'm going to move my browser out of the way. And I'll go to the path of that hot folder that I created. And I'll open it up. And I'll drag one of my files into it. And we'll wait for a few moments. And you can see after a brief delay, the hot folder noticed that the file was copied in, and it has loaded it into the database and made a copy of it in this succeeded folder. So if we flip back to Springboard, note that in the Append Logger File tool, not only are manual appends listed here, but hot folder appends are also listed, and if you want to undo those, you can undo those in the same way as you can any other file append using this undo button.